Good afternoon. I'm Bradley McCalister, founder of Spiracraft, and this is Spiracraft Live. I hope everybody's doing well today. It is a stormy day here in South Georgia. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully we don't get blown away with the hurricane stuff coming up and all that. If I run out of here because of the tornado warning, then it's going to be one of those crazy days. But I'm looking forward to this. Going to have a lot of fun doing resin casting today. And I hope, hey Joe, good to see you. I hope the audio is working okay because I bought a brand new microphone after last week and it didn't work out of the box. And I found another one over here in my bag of supplies. So hopefully I tested it. Hopefully it sounds good out there, or at least acceptable. I can't seem to win with microphones, but hey, you know, what are you going to do? But just give me a heads up if it sounds all right, if it doesn't sound crazy or anything like that, and I'll charge right along. Looking forward to working on this resin project today. I have been down raiding the stores. I've been to the Dollar Tree, which is my favorite, to go get bowls and cup molds and plasticware, if you will, for cheap. And then I also went to the hardware store. Joe says sounds okay. All right, thank you, Joe. I know may have some kind of a weird echo, and it's not as good when I'm on the lav here for some reason. But hey, we'll deal with it. I raided the hardware store. I raided the Dollar Tree because this is going to be a fairly big pour, and I wasn't sure just what size bucket I need. And here's the Burl, our infamous Burl, that has now finished its stabilizing process. If you're not familiar, this is a Manzanita root burl, and it's a big old guy. And this came to me from Rich Bolduc down at Nova Technitool. He was nice enough to send this to me about a year ago. And so last week, if you weren't around, we put this into stabilizing resin and went through the process of stabilizing. And I learned some interesting things about trying to stabilize Manzanita. It doesn't really like to take stabilizing resin. I did some math last night after this was dry. It has been in the vacuum chamber. It was in there for days under vacuum and then soaked. Literally, it's been in there since last week until yesterday. And it gained a total of about 10 ounces after I dried it. So I dried it in the oven to get the moisture out, and then we stabilized it, right? So it was down to 23 something. I don't have my notes. I lost my little note card. It lost water weight, and then it gained only about 10 ounces. Usually they absorb a lot, a piece of soft punky wood. This stuff is really, really hard, and so it didn't take much. And we used a violet dye in the stabilizing resin, if you remember. And I don't know how much it took of that because it really didn't absorb the resin all that much, just a little bit. So it's kind of hard to say what it will look like when it's all done, but we're going to cast it anyway. And especially if you're new to casting, I've got a lot of different things that I can show you here today. And we're working with Spiracraft epoxy resin. It's a 2-part resin, 2-to-1, 2 parts resin to 1 part hardener. Michael's in here. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you, Michael. Good to see you. Hope things are doing well out there on the far side of the continent, if you will. I had fun down there today, and I'm going to pull a bunch of stuff up here. I went down, like I was saying earlier, to the stove, and I was having fun. They looked at me like I was kind of crazy, but that's nothing new. So first I went to my favorite, which is Dollar Tree, right? Because everything used to be $1. And let me move these around here a little bit. So I like the Dollar Tree for casting projects because the stuff is really cheap, right? It doesn't cost much at all. So I went to Dollar Tree and I got this, I can't hold them all. No, this red bucket's ace. It goes over here. I got this blue bucket. I got this orange pail with a handy shovel. I got 4 of these clear dog food holder bowls, and something. Oh, and a couple of spatulas and a whisk right? So I think I spent $12 for all of that at the Dollar Tree, right? And I wasn't sure, you know, what size I was going to need and all that, so I had a lot of fun. And it turns out that none of these are big enough. The orange one isn't big enough. These are for mixing. I knew they wouldn't be big enough, but they're for mixing. So these two will be for another project, or who knows, we may end up using them today in the process. But 12 bucks at the Dollar Tree. So then I stopped by my local Ace, and I got, I believe this is a 2-gallon bucket and a 1-gallon bucket. Oh, actually this one came from Dollar Tree too. A mixing cup, several graduated mixing cups, and then actually this thing was pretty cool. And I spent $43 at Ace, at the hardware store, getting this. So if you can find what you need from the Dollar Tree or anything else like that for the disposable stuff, hey, you're gonna save money, all right? It's something to make a mold out of. Doesn't have to be super fancy for this. And again, this is a 4-pound piece of wood. So, you know, you're not going to go out and find the things like that you might want every day. Let's see what's going on over here. Michael's there, Joe. Mary Alice, hey, Mary Alice, good to see you in here. Jeff Walson, good afternoon. Michael, Jeff Peters has made it. Jeff, you skipping work today? Jeff Peters, you skipping work, or are you just on your lunch break? So you don't have to spend a lot on your molds for a big project like this. Now, if you're making pens and all and different things that have the little silicone molds, you're going to use a bunch. That's a whole different game. This is a one-shot deal, so don't go crazy with it. I have already, and I'll talk about it more, but this has already been, I tested the piece in here, and it's got the mold release already on it. So I'm going to put this down for a minute, and I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm going to set this over here. I don't know, maybe you guys have seen these before, but I decided to buy this. This thing was 12 bucks, right? But that's the part that lasts forever, and it comes with disposable inserts, and it's actually a pretty good size, even though it doesn't actually say on it how many ounces it holds. But I thought this was kind of a cool looking rig, depending on how well it works. It's kind of like your disposable paint trays for painting your house with a roller. There we go. And it's got a handle on it. So you can hold it like this, you can mix and pour, and you throw that away in our disposable world that we have today, or you could reuse it until it doesn't work anymore. So anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. The handy paint pail for a project like this, and it's got the corners where you can pour it out. I know, maybe I'm a geek, but I thought it was kind of cool. Like I say, it was 12 bucks, kind of expensive, but I'll use it over and over and over. And a couple of different mixing cups for whatever. One thing with the resin that we're using today, Spiracraft epoxy resin, it's 2-to-1 by volume. It is not a by weight, so if you're using like a Lumelite urethane resin, that is by weight. And then you get out your handy dandy scale, and that's how you mix your resin, is by weight, not by volume. If you mix it by volume, you'll mess it up. Just like with epoxy that is by volume, if you mix it by weight, you'll mess it up. Okay? Now this resin, it's not super cold here. It's in the 60s. I did carry it into the house yesterday. That's a good southern term, carried it into the house. To make sure it was at a nice solid room temperature for at least 24 hours. Resin is very particular, and you want to make sure that it's happy and comfortable and stabilized at, you know, the 72 plus or minus room temperature, things like that. So I had it in the house, and I actually have a whole another 1.5 gallons in case. I don't know how much I'm going to need for this project. So I've actually got 3 gallons of resin here ready to go. I won't need 3, but I am prepared on that for once. Let's see what it says over here. Jeff Peters says he's on lunch break. Jeff also says, I do resin and I have not done so great. Well, hopefully you'll pick up some tips here today, Jeff, and you'll do better and have more fun. So that's the basic of it. Again, I don't know how much resin it's going to take, but we're going to find out today. So, a little bit of preparation, and let's see, what kind of extra buttons do I want to show, overlays and all that stuff. I think I'll just start out by dropping this into the bucket. So here's the Burl, and I'm going to go to the overhead, which is 5. And if you remember this crazy Burl, and I don't know if you can see, if you see the white right there, that hole, that's the bottom, that's that white bucket. So this has a hole all the way through it. And that's why I didn't dare turn this piece, because of that hole and this giant crack right here. This thing was a hazard. It was an explosion waiting to happen. So I wanted to stabilize to get as much of it solidified as possible. And now with our resin, we're going to get this thing in really good shape. Again, one of the things I really like about this Spiracraft epoxy resin, especially with a piece like this, we got a ton of voids here, right? We got a lot of openings, a lot of air pockets, and this resin has a 2-hour open time. So it doesn't start to really kick off in this exothermic reaction for, 2 hours before it really starts to set. And I don't have my thermometer here today, but I'm not going to worry about it. With a heat thermometer, digital thermometer, you can test it and check it. This project, we don't need to worry about that. So anyway, I figured out that this was the bucket it was going to fit in. Now, one of the challenges I have is trying to decide which way it should go in the bucket. How should it be mounted? Because theoretically, the bottom of the bucket will be the bottom of our piece. So when I look at the piece, let me go back to the overhead for you, trying to ascertain, well, what do I want to be the top? What do I want to be the bottom of this guy? And how does it fit in the bucket, right? And, this is a piece of root here. This is all Burl over here on this side. There's a big void here, but it's also Burl. So, the first shot is to just drop it in like so, which puts this piece on the top, possibly sticking out a little bit. I couldn't find anything anywhere today that would allow this to lay sideways. I couldn't find a big enough bowl mold for this to lay sideways, to have that kind of orientation. So this is going to end up going, and I don't want to put it in, it won't actually go in this way. So we really only have one choice, which is not a choice when you only have one. It's going to sit like that, and if I pop you on 7, you can kind of see how far it is from the top. Part of this is right at the top, and I can try and adjust that a little bit, okay, but only so much. Now, one thing I want to show you, and I don't know if you'll be able to see from that end camera or not. If not, I'll just show you in the overhead. I've got a feeling this piece is going to float, all right? It still floated in the stabilizing resin. It bobbed like a cork, all right? So I have a little trick that I've done before, and I like it a lot. Barbecue skewers, right? How do you keep this piece from floating higher than it needs to? You want to keep it down. You don't want to use any more resin than you need to. So you can just see a dark spot right here. I have drilled 4 holes in this bucket, and I have these barbecue or shish kebab skewers. I can call them barbecue shish kebab skewers. And what I'll do, and I'll jump into the overhead for you. I come in through the hole, and they're tight. It's tight. And we can adjust this a little bit depending on how we want to try and get things to go. And they're flexible too, which is kind of cool. So this is going to go right across the top of this guy. All right. And if it ends up being in some resin, well, it's going to get turned away. So we're not going to worry too much about that. So all we really want this to do is to be our trap to keep this from raising up. Okay? And the same thing with the other direction. I have my holes here. Now, yes, here's the key, and I may orient this. Your resin can't go above the height of the sticks. If you go above the stick, I'm going to jump over here. If you go above the height of the stick, the resin starts to leak out of the bucket, and you'll lose it. Okay, so that's kind of one of the key things that you got to keep in mind. And this one will go in, and these skewers only have a point on one end, so you can only kind of go one direction. I learned this the hard way the first time I had something that was a floater, and I was doing the stream out here, and all of a sudden it floated, and I didn't have any clue how to keep it down. Well, after that event, I went ahead and came up with a plan. Okay, so this will keep that from floating up out of the bucket. All right, that's a cool deal. So now we've got our piece. That's the easy part. We've got it down in the bucket, and realistically, a little bit of this is going to stick up above the top line. Now it's not really anything special as far as the wood goes. It's sticking up here, so I may let it stick out. Although, you know, I'd rather it be down. So I think, if you don't mind, I'm going to pop these back out real quick and see if I can't reorient this and get it just a little bit lower down in the bucket. I should call it a mold. It's not a bucket today, it's a mold, right? So let me see if I can't play with this just a little bit and get this guy reoriented. I'm going to pop you back into the overhead. And because it seems like, I swear I had it a little bit lower earlier. Now that's lower, and that's just got this. And this is this is rough, rude looking here. And it's going to get hollowed. This is going to be hollowed, whether it's a bowl or a vase. So let's think about this. That can stick up the top. The only problem there is that it's going to be hard to get it on the lathe. Facebook says you can use a hot glue gun to seal those holes. Indeed, you could, actually. You could seal them up. If I knew where my hot glue gun was, I could do that. I don't have a clue, but that's a great tip. So I don't really like that sticking up. And I sprayed lots of mold release in here, in case you're wondering, so it shouldn't be a problem. And I really kind of only have a couple of two choices. There's a better one. There's another one. That way it works pretty good, and it's got just a little teeny bit, and it's off center. Here's the center of the bucket. So this high point right here, let's see if I put you on 7. You can't quite see. I don't have it zoomed in because I've got it set up where you can see all this. This is the highest point right here. Let me go back to the overhead. All right, let's go back up here, and I kind of like that. I'm going to take it out and look at, up here. So what I'm doing is, this is the orientation that it's sitting in right now, and I'm kind of looking at it and thinking about, you know, when I turn this piece, what's going to get exposed, what's going to be resin, how much resin are we going to turn away. We want to highlight the burly part of this. This is the burly part, this is burly part. So this orientation actually looks pretty good, like that. And if I can get that just away from the center, right there, I'll be able to get a drive to it, because that's going to stick up above the resin just a touch. I could have put the holes up higher, but I decided I'd put them right there where it was nice and solid. All right, yeah, I think that's going to work. I think that's what we're going to do right there. So let's put our pieces back in. We'll pop you back into the overhead. We'll put our skewers back in. Now, I need you guys to be thinking about color combinations, right? Because this burl looks fairly dark. I did some reading, and there's supposed to kind of be a reddish in there. The violet and the stabilizing resin, I think that is out the window. I don't believe that's going to give us anything to speak of. I don't think we're going to be getting color from that. Okay, so there we are. We're secured enough. That's not going to get away. We might have just a little bit stick up above our resin. No big deal. All right, so we're set. That's we can set that off to the side. It's ready to go. And also, this bucket is kind of handy because it has pail handles. So when I go to put it into the vacuum or the pressure pot, I can drop it right in by the handle and not have to worry about trying to tweak with it. Okay, so I'm just going to set this off to the side for a few minutes. Okay, couple of things about mixing resin. When it comes to mixing up your resin, one of the first problems you can have that people run into is that some of the resin will be, when it cures or sets up, you'll have a soft spot or kind of a gooey spot. Jeff Pierce says, doesn't the holes leak resin? Well, not if I don't fill it up all the way to the holes, Jeff. If I go right to the holes, it won't leak resin. Or as the user said, I could seal them with glue, hot glue, or anything else like that. But I'm just going to fill it right up to the holes and let it be at that. But otherwise, yeah, I could take steps to fill the holes, but I don't want to put that much more resin in there. But mixing your resin is super important. And that's why I have, multiple bowls here or containers. And I brought in different paddles. I'm a fan of the whisk. Okay, and I use these over and over. And this is just a regular spatula. And I saw this one today, and I really want to show this one to you in an overhead. This particular profile, it's just like a scraper. It's got a flat side and it's round, and so you can get right down into the bottom corner. Let me get a bowl here. When you're mixing, you want to scrape the sides real well. There you go. You want to scrape the side and you want to scrape the bottom and get down in the corners. And this bowl here is a little rounded, so you may use also the rounded spatch. It actually gets in there. You want to be sure to scrape all your sides, okay? And after you've got everything scraped and you've got it all mixed, one of the best things you can do is actually just pour it, the entire thing. This is a double stir, if you will. Pour the entire thing into another container. Scrape this one as best you can. Scrape everything out about it and pour it into that container and mix again. That assures you of a good, solid mix. Now, one of the biggest problems we run into if we don't mix our resin properly is part of it doesn't set up, and that's usually the stuff that was on the outer edges. Did I check that the mold bucket fits in the pressure pot? Well, I know it does fit. I didn't stick it in there, but I know it fits because that's a 5-gallon pressure pot, and indeed it will go in there, Mike. But if there was a question, that would be a good thing to do. Like I say, talking about checking things, luckily I checked. I don't think I told you guys this. Last week the microphone went out, and so I ordered a new microphone, had it come in. It came in the other day, and I hooked it up today. And I thought, I better check that thing, just not 5 minutes before, but maybe an hour before. And sure enough, the brand new microphone doesn't work. Nothing, dead. So I'm actually running on microphone number 3 that I've had around here. So checking things is good. So Michael's point to making sure the bucket fits in the pressure pot is a good thing. And I know that this one does fit in there because it's big enough. Just as I use a paddle and a drill to mix and then scrape the sides with a spatula. Jeff, that works too, if you're into doing that. The thing about doing that, Jeff, is it does add a lot of air into the resin, and air is kind of our enemy. So, I mean, personally, everybody's got their own thing, and I see a lot of people using the mixers, electric mixers, and yeah, it works great, but it does add more air that you have to worry with about getting out. And if you don't have any trouble, then hey, it's not a problem. Just something to think about. I've always been kind of a hand guy on this in that regard. And this piece has so many pockets you know, I'm really going to be pushing the envelope. I'm betting that when we turn this next week, we'll probably find some voids that didn't fill. And that won't be an air bubble that the pressure pot gets rid of. It will be an air pocket. And a big air pocket is too big for the pressure pot to compress down to nothing. I've also learned that using the holographic foil that I've got. The foil would make a pocket and it would hold air and the pressure pot would not compress it. So it's something to be aware of. And just you're always kind of fighting the air thing. All right, so colors. I got however many all are out there. I don't know. The piece is dark. We're gonna add a resin tint. We've got there's technically about 16 different resin tints. I have maybe 10 of them here today. So we're going to tint our resin a color or colors. And then I have pearlescent powders. I have iridescent pearl powders. And I have straight pearl powders. So we got to kind of come up with a color theme here. And what I can do, and I want you all to start thinking about it, I can mix the first batch of resin I can mix it clear, and then we can add the color. So be thinking about it. Put it in the comment column there. A color combination. You know, we have bright yellow. We have turquoise. We have phthalo blue. We have school bus yellow. Phthalo green. The green might be kind of interesting. White, red, a bright red, and then we have some of the natural tones. We have a red oxide, which is almost the same color as the Burl piece. We have a leaf green, brown oxide, and brick red. And then, you know, we have these other pigments, the pearls, that are going to go in there, and they're going to play off of that resin tint color. So we got a million different combinations, and that's one of the fun things to me about doing resin casting, and especially in the hybrids, because you've got the wood as well, and we've got this Burl. So the trick is trying to guess what's going to make the best looking piece and make the Burl stand out, and make it look good. And so let's see, Mike says, Jeff only if the forgets they are there. What else? Did you check that the mold? But yes. Use a paddle. Green and gold. Michael McCune says green and gold. Mike, on the green and gold, green resin with gold pearlescent powder. Is that what I'm hearing you say? That would be my first thought. That's what you said. Green resin tint and gold pearl powder. I do love the gold, and so there's one. All right. Let's do some mixing here. We'll get started, and let's try. That's a big old dude. I'm trying to think what bucket do I want to mix in? Because it's 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1, and I'm going to need probably a gallon of this stuff. So. And we can split up the colors as well. I'm just kind of trying to think ahead about volume here of resin. I really want to try this guy. I wish it said somewhere on it just how big it is. You know, it should, but it doesn't, which is odd. But nonetheless, 2 parts resin, 1 part catalyst, and that's a half gallon of catalyst. This bucket holds a half gallon. This thing does. It sure looks like it. It'd be interesting. If this holds exactly this half gallon, then we can just take and pour that a whole other gallon and a half in there, but that won't fit into that bucket, because this bucket of course, isn't marked. I love the little pail on here, don't you think? Put my little handle back on there. Let's see. That's not 1.5 gallons, so we can't use that much. We're going to back this down so I don't get myself in trouble. And since this guy pours, actually, hang on a second, guys. I'm going to get, I got that full. My cardboard thingy over here. Hang on just a sec. He's got a plan. He's got a plan. No, he doesn't like that one after all. That's what happens when you use your lathe as your tabletop. I'll just have a little spill. It's okay. I'll spill down onto the floor. We're going to back this off a little bit so we don't get too far crazy. All right. Looks like a nice drink. So that, when it is level, again, it's by volume. I'm going to take it right up to the little line. And in we go. And we're going to save that one as nothing but catalyst. Okay? And then our resin, again, nicely warmed in the house. Mike says a couple of different greens. See, this is one of those tricky ones. You know, I could have taken the time to use something to figure the volume that I'm going to need to displace, but that thing has so many holes. You know, you can use sand and you can use different things that will fill in the voids. But that Burl has got so many holes in it, I didn't really want to interject all that stuff in there. So I went to the same level on this as I have with the hardener. And the other thing you can do, because this will can be off by a little bit, because I'm using this, if I use the same one over, you can actually have another one, which I have over here, and fill two. And we're going to want to scrape this down so that we get pretty close. With epoxy, you don't have to be exactly right on the money. You want to be as close as possible. It doesn't have to be 100% absolute perfect. I keep trying to figure out what this hurricane storm stuff is doing. It was supposed to go to the east of us, or west of us, excuse me, and now it's coming east more. So I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen weather-wise. And we're supposed to be in the 30s come the weekend. And now this is not the exciting part here. We'll just stick that in there. Now I know for a fact that we will just swallow this first batch going into the mold, and that's okay. And there's nothing that says that we have to have the same colors at the different levels. It is going to mix because of the long open time. It's one of the things I have found about the Spiracraft epoxy, especially the way we're doing this, because we're going to mix it all early at the front end of the 2 hours. it's going to migrate. We could make think white and green and just make them separate and put them in here, and by the time this thing started to set up, they would have mixed into, without us doing anything, they would have mixed a lot just on their own accord. So that's why the digital thermometer comes in handy. You wait till it starts to exotherm. So like right now, the room temperature in here is about 68. And if I want to have something keep colors distinct with this resin, I wait till it's at about 110, 115 and rising, and then I'll combine the colors and drop it into the pressure pot because it's on its way up. Okay. This one, we're just going to let it do whatever. And the reason being, I want as much time for this to get into all the nooks and crannies as possible in that burl. Again, it's got a hole right down the middle. So we've got a lot of stuff to fill in there. And again, like I say, there's nothing wrong. Like Mike says, a couple of greens, because they're going to blend in the middle. And I kind of want to see just where we get on this first batch going into our piece. I know it's going to disappear most of the void in the bucket, most of the void in the mold, excuse me, I keep calling it a bucket. Most of the void airspace in the mold is in the bottom. So it's going to suck up this first batch like nobody's business. Okay. I do have paper towels around in here. I could put gloves on to keep the resin off of me, but I don't think I'm going to get too terribly dirty here today. All right. I'm going to use this same spatula for right now. Pop into the overhead. Everything is red. And we'll start to mix. And mix and mix and mix. I'm curious to see if this will fit into one of the dog containers. Because a lot of times I like to make up my resin and then make a couple of different colors and then pour them somewhat simultaneously from different sides, or pour one color and then the next color and then the next color as I go along. The other thing I like a lot is a whisk. I love these whisks, and they actually work better than the spatula. I'm going to hold the spatula off to the side. Now, I am a fan of the whisk, not because I'm a good cook. It just seems to work pretty well. I like that better. I'm going to actually set this guy into here or there and whisk away, because I can get serious with the whisk there. And you want to see it all nice and uniform. Now I'm going to get a paper towel out and clean up a little bit of resin drip that I got going on. This lathe has seen worse. Okay, so let's test my theory on one of these. It actually says what it is, but it's so small I can't read it. I think it says 96.8 fluid ounces for this bowl. I'm pretty sure that's what that says. So let's see what we have here. This should be just about right. Yep, okay, so we're going to make 2 of these. I know that for a fact. And I can pop you into the side one here. Should have gone 7, 8, 7. Thank you. So that's our initial mix. And then we can, again, stir in here to be sure that we have got what we want. And I love this long open time. Just think about if you were using urethane that's set up in 15, 20 minutes, you'd have to really be hustling. Not that you can't do it. People do it all day long. But I like having the extra time. Okay. And another thing we can do, we can make one color, we can make one batch that is a color, and we can leave one batch neutral. I'll do that sometimes, and let that, and just pour the two together and let those kind of mix. So we'll have some clearish, and we'll have the color different swirl just with the clear. Lots and lots of variety here. All right, so that's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I'll put you back in the overhead there. I'm going to set this one off to the side for a minute. And we will do this again. And take our handy little cup. I like this little guy. And lo and behold, that is exactly 2 of those. And literally, there's nothing left in there. And that's good to know. And goes our hardener. We'll put our paddle in here too. So yes, in theory, we're going to use the entire gallon and a half. Now you're asking me, why did I not just pour this entire container in? Well, because I know for a fact that over at Spiracraft, they don't exactly perfectly measure. They usually, I say this and watch it turn out different, they usually put extra in. So you want to be sure that you have, a good mix that is close and appropriate in amounts. I'll scrape this guy down. Is Rich in here yet today? Rich may be working. I haven't seen him pop up. Rich Bolduc, who gave me the Burl. I haven't seen him pop up in here. Rich, if you're in here, say hello. I think maybe he's in a meeting today. He might be having to work. Usually he's in here on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. I will be doing making a cover here, because the new Nova Nebula is coming in here. They're actually on the water now. We ordered several. We sold out of our first batch of nebulas, and one of them is going to be in here as my studio lathe. And I will try and keep it a little bit cleaner than this guy, who has been around for years and years. This Colt, it's good lathe, and it's going to go over to the workshop where I will actually turn on it and make messes, and not make the messes so much in here, only when I have to. And this one may take a few minutes to get all of it out of here, so I'll pop up here, and I'm going to hold this and let it drain for just a few minutes till it gets exactly up to where the other part was. Because that's the whole end of the bucket, or they were a little short there on this one, but we'll see. We have another gallon. I'm pretty sure we'll get where we need to be here in just a minute. So we have a color suggestion of green and gold. Now, the green, Michael, is, I don't know what happens let's see, this should show up. I'll look and see. I'll wait and see if it shows up the green or not, because of the chroma key, it may be gray. I know on the front screen it is, but I'm waiting for it to switch over. And okay, so there's no key on that. So that's the green that I currently have, and that is leaf green. And I have a turquoise as well. And we're getting real close here. I'm getting to our line. So leaf green and gold, and I have an iridescent gold powder, which is actually white until it bounces off a color, and then I have solid gold pearlescent powder as well, so we can combine the two. I also I like silver, and I brought a bunch of glitters over, and I want opinion. Anybody got an opinion on putting any glitter into the mix for a little twinkle? I've got some holographic glitter that might be an interesting little twist. I know I like it. And there's another color, guys, that I've been thinking about today. Either a copper, let me pop you into the overhead again, a pearl powder, a copper, which would go along with the color of the wood, or a rose red. I had rose red out here somewhere. I don't know where I put it. There it is. Rose red is similar to the copper, but that might be an interesting, because of the pearl in this in there. So give me thoughts on rose red pearl powder along with the green tint. All right, I can't look at two and do two different things. I sort of pour this out on the lathe top, and so now we're right to our line. Good deal. So there's a 1.5 gallon kit, and that's the nice thing about the Spiracraft. It comes with a 1.5 gallon kit. We'll just set this underneath here. Pour that in there. We'll let it drain. Copper would complement the green and gold. I think you're right, Michael. So, like I said, the copper and the rose red are similar. The copper is definitely, is copper, and either one. I see Facebook froze. I see it looks like most people are on YouTube, which is good because Facebook seems to freeze a lot. All right, scraping this guy down. Nothing like having to sneeze when you've got resin cup in your hand and a paddle in your other hand, and trying not to sneeze. I need a little cooking music playing in the background, ever so softly, you know. I feel like I'm making cookie dough or something here today. Okay, we're going to set that off. Go to our mix. I'm going to pop you back in the overhead. There we go. And I think I'll just set this over here in that container. And we'll mix away we go. So next week when I turn this, it will be probably a lot of easy wood tools. I'll pop back up here. Probably a lot of the easy wood tools with the negative rake cutters to turn through all this. And I haven't decided if it's going to be a bowl shape, and if it is a bowl, it's going to be kind of a rolled top. Some call it calabash, whatever. Because I want to highlight the burl as much as possible. Otherwise, it could be a vase form. Vase is a little bit more work. Kind of just depends on how it rolls out. But I'm going to be using the negative rate cutters from Easywood. And I'll probably also sharpen up some of the Carter & Son Toolworks conventional tools. You can use them on resin. And the wood. And this Manzanita is really, really hard. And for what I've been reading, it's a really, really hard wood. So you need a really sharp tool. Okay, I'm going to pop you back into overhead. Mostly so I could scratch my nose because it was really itching. And I'm going to wipe some of this resin off the lathe. Just so it doesn't get too messy. But I'm looking forward to next week of turning it and sanding it with the industrial sandpaper. And even though I may not get it to the final sanded finish, I'm going to shoot it with some lacquer next week. So we can see, because this is going to be a gloss finish piece, that's my plan. Giving Ace a plug here today. It actually pours better once you've got it. You've got the catalyst component, which is thinner than the resin itself. And I'm gonna just let that be. We'll set that over here, and we'll give this a good stir again. I know this is not the exciting part, just the mixing. I mean, I could have come in here and just said, "Hey, the resin's all mixed. Here we go," but you know, if you've never done it before, it's good to see how the resin gets mixed. And again, so I'm double mixing this, if you will, because it was mixed in one container, and now I'm mixing it in another. Okay. All right, so if nobody else can come up with a color, I'm on board with the leaf green and gold and copper pearlescent powders. Okay, so if you have, it's kind of like the wedding. If you have an opinion, if you object, speak now or forever. So always shake up your resin tints. They've been sitting around. Mine have been sitting for quite a while. So I'm going to shake these up really good. Make sure they do what I need them to do. And I will pop you back into the overhead when I go to put this in. Overhead. This is the concentrate. So we're going to count drops. We're going to say, and the other question is opaque or translucent. I don't know if this is a new one that has the cap since the plastic inside. Nope. Had a little skin there. All right, now we're good to go. I'll call it one big squeeze. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this could actually use a little more shaking as well. So you'll see it doesn't take a lot. And what I think I can pop you into overlay of the end camera so that you can see the color develop. Okay. So that was about 6 drops, plus or minus. And this, because we're using green, Michael, so now think about this. Next week and even today, any shot on the front camera with the chroma key, it's going to turn into the back wall. But that's what happens when you use chroma key. So that's a nice, it's not lime green, it's nice and light. It's a nice light green. And what I'm going to do now, so that we have some comparison, I'll put the Burl up here next to it. Okay. So that's, I mean, I like this color green, and the gold and the copper, I'm actually thinking that's going to be pretty cool. Dutchman, this is a slow hardening, if you will. It has a 2-hour open time, so I can spend all 2 hours today going nice and slow and easy with this. That's one of the things I really like about it. I've used it, where am I at here? 3. I've used this resin a lot at the woodworking shows. I used to do those. In the past, have a whole seminar for an hour, hour and a half on resin, and I would mix it from the start at the beginning, and I would talk for the whole hour and a half before. I like how this is green or gray. I told you that would happen. I like being able to work with it with an open, long open time, so it works out pretty well. Dutchman, absolutely. You can talk to me this afternoon. Not a problem. If you don't catch me this afternoon, you can catch me tomorrow. But absolutely, shoot me an email, or I'm not sure what my afternoon is like. Is why I'm saying, but definitely shoot me an email, and we can arrange a time to talk. Be happy to cover any kind of questions that you might have. All right, that's kind of funny seeing that gray there. So we're going to go back to overhead, so that you're not seeing the gray piece. You're seeing the green. All right, now. Gold, and I don't have my little measuring spoon. I never really use a measuring spoon. This is solid gold, and I'm going to run around here real quick and look in the infamous drawer, because I used to have a little spoon. If I can find it real quick, it would be nice to put the same amounts in. I'm sure that I won't find it. As you guys who visit with me out here regularly know that I go into this drawer looking for an item, and it's usually futile. I find it right afterwards. No, I'm not going to find it. There's a little spoon somewhere, but here's a little. What else have I got here I could use? Otherwise, I'm just going to shake it and not worry about it. I think we'll just shake it and not worry about it. Okay. Going to be using a pressure pop. So we're going to give it about that much on the surface. Let's put the lid back on. He says, my luck, I'd spill it all over the place. So that's just a nice light touch of the gold. I want to add the iridescent gold as well. Okay. Iridescent gold is right here. Now you've done yours at 65 pounds. Yeah, this one is set to release at 70. So as you can see, this is white, but it's actually gold. And when it bounces off the darkness of the burl, you'll get the gold, and bouncing off the green as well. So we're going to try, if we want to keep these two batches, because the other batch is down here on the floor, relatively similar in nature, in colors. And now the copper. This will be interesting. Here's the copper. All right. So 3 pearlescent powders into the green. And we'll give this a good mix. I think that'd be pretty cool. Michael, I hope you like the color, because we own it now. I think that's pretty cool. Green and gold with a little bit of copper to it. And I just can't leave, I can't leave it alone. I'm sorry. I'm going to put some holographic glitter in it. All right, so we have 4 items in here. That'll give it a little extra twinkle. That wasn't much. Okay. All right. What are we doing on time? We should be doing fine. 2:03, we started at 1. Okay. I'm actually just going to lay that right there. And you see, you can see the side shot. Outside the box, Dutchman, that's the only way I know how to think. All right. I could, it doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to pour it to it. It doesn't, we're not mixing anything. We're not doing anything special, in here. I'm going to move this over so you can see. You see how the pearl shows up against on the wood? So the second batch will be really close to filling us up to our holes where it's going to leak. And I'll set this back down. I'll let this one just kind of re-pool, if you will, and in the bottom. Okay, so there it sits. It's got its first round in there. And so now we're going to take our other pre-mixed batch. Bring it up to our mixing table / lathe. Dutchman, you see these sticks? The shish kebab sticks? That's what's going to keep it from floating. They hold it down. All right, back to our resin tint. Give it another shake. Give it a good shake. I like how, I don't know if you can see here, and I don't zoom in, the pearl kind of pools into some of the holes, some of the deep spots. All right, so we're going for approximately 6 drops, 6 squirts. This is one of my older jars. It's actually got a skin in the top in there that's getting in the way. Hang on a second. See if we can't. Yeah, there's my problem. Let's get that out of there. I have just a tool for that too. I have a skewer over here. Hang on a second while I clean out the lid. Had a little chunk got up in there. Okay, so we'll just put that out of the way. I'm going to make sure this is well mixed. A little thick down there in the bottom. This will help. So I just stick my stick down in here. Put that over on a towel. I knew I had all these paper towels out here today for a reason. 2, 3. See if we can get the rest of this in here. 4, 5, and 6, and that's enough. Yeah, poking it with a stick, it's kind of like a snake. Poke the snake, it'll move. I'm going to throw that over there. We'll mix in our green first. Makes me think of St. Patrick's Day, Michael. You know, I like to do things also, like after I pour all this, sometimes I'll take like the glitters, and I've got a bunch of glitter. I'm tempted. I love chartreuse, and I don't know if you guys will shoot me or not if I put some chartreuse. I've already put the holographic. If I put some chartreuse glitter in this batch, it's just something about that color that I love. So we're really close, I think, on our green color, you know, as far as being a match. Okay, so here's our straight gold. About that much as before. And we'll go ahead and mix it. I could dump them all on there, but I kind of like to mix it first as I go, just to be thorough. Max says go for it. I started to cut up some of the holographic film and like stuff it in the cracks and stuff on this, but I had other things got in the way of my morning as usual. Okay, that's glitter. Iridescent gold, which again is white till it bounces off of a color. Perfect measurement every time. Use my arm there. Don't sneeze. It'll go everywhere. There we go. All right. Our copper, like we did in the last one. About like that. It should make for some interesting deals in there. And then when the Burl, you know, I really hope the Burl, really hope the wind doesn't blow. I'm watching the weather outside, guys. I hope it doesn't blow stuff down. Hopefully this really complements the Burl swirl, and this thing has some nice swirl in it. That's the, one of the beauties is you don't know what you've got in a burl like this until you start turning it and get it cut open. So here's our holographic glitter. That's for the stars. It's always a favorite of mine. And I'm looking to see if there's any chartreuse on the table. If not, I have it over in a box to my side. And then if we come up short, we'll make some other color, I think. All right, let me go in here and find my chartreuse. Just because I just really want to. The color is super similar. You can see you can tell it almost looks the same. And I put that on there, and that's just gonna. I'm actually gonna put a bunch of that on there. And so this now goes into inventory. And that makes for quite a little batch. Very cool. All right, we'll bring our main bowl over, more so. And we'll see just how close we are here. Just going to rest that there, let it drip. We're going to have just a little teeny bit left once I take it up to the holes. Boy, it's going to be really close. Almost exactly 1.5 gallons. And I'm literally to the holes. And if it drips out a little bit in my pressure pot, that's no big deal because my pressure pot is a mess in there. And there you have it. Oops, it's out of focus. Get back in focus. It's on autofocus. Must have focused on it. Come on. Follow me. Follow me down to the bucket. Camera focus. I don't have a controller. Come on, focus in there. Come on down, come on down. See if we can get in focus. There we go. You just got to trick it. All right, so there we have it. That is, so we have just a little bit. I mean, it's touching the bottom and it's up on us on our stick. Okay. And our handle, of course, will go like so. And I'll let you, you can watch this. I'm going to leave it before, I mean, I got the pressure pot right back here behind me. And once we put it in there, that's kind of all done. But I want to let you see those colors start to kind of come up, how that pearl will swirl on its own, what it's going to do. Now hopefully the big fissure and the big crack will all fill and we won't have any voids in there when it's all said and done, when it sets up. Having a quick sip of water here. But that's all it really takes, is a couple of shoots there. I mean, it goes up just a fuzz, but that's okay. You know, if I had anything I wanted different, I would like to push that over to the side. If I can push that over to the side just a little bit, what I want is to be able to get a center, you know, a live center, drive center, spur drive, whatever, into the center of this guy. Now, worst case scenario is I can always grind a flat onto it if I have to. And let me pop you to the full side view there. So you can see the bow in this one right over the top of everything. Hey, is that Dad? Just not popping in? Dad, it will blend perfectly with the first batch. Absolutely perfectly. Turn that off. It'll be a perfect blend. It's right up to the holes. See, just a little teeny bit dripping out right there. So that's all good. But you can see the colors starting to pop up as they settle. I think that's going to be pretty cool with the green and the gold. Michael, thank you for the suggestion on the color palette. All right. And let's see. I guess I got nothing else to do really but put this in the pressure pot. And so I'm going to leave it on that so that you don't see me bent over and upside down. And with the handle, you just pick it up. She goes right into my pressure pot, just like that. Bada bing, bada boom. Get that out of the way. Good deal. Hey, and my lathe is almost clean because I've been wiping it down. I'll clean that off after the fact. So it's in the pressure pot now. I'll put the lid on and crank it down when we get all done here. Again, it's only been mixed. So we're just about an hour and 20 minutes into the whole thing. So this resin really only probably has about an hour on it or so. I don't think my thermometer is in here, but I will check. Let me pop you back into the overhead so I can walk in front of this camera. I think the thermometer is off in another location. But if it was here, I would show you the temperature. No. Unless it's underneath in the infamous cabinet here. No, it's over in the other cabinet that used to be in here. I used to have a big cabinet that sat right over here, and it was just too big. So it's over in the new workshop. And I've got two smaller cabinets, and one of those is going to get mounted on the wall for keeping these pearlescent powders and tints and different colorants. It could be just a small cabinet over there, and then my thermometer, my digital thermometer would be there, be here. So that resin, I would take my digital thermometer and take its temperature if I wanted to you know, have it stay. If I had two distinct colors, I would wait for those two distinct colors to get hot, and then I'd mix them together. Mike says, how was the trip north? Lots of color? Yes. I've been up 3 times in the last month, I think it was, to the folks' house there up north. And Bridget went with me the last time. The most color I saw was the second trip. And then when we got there the third trip, the leaves had started to come off. And it was cloudy, but when the sun came out, the leaves that were still there were beautiful. Great trip and a good time. We had a little breakaway. So good deal. Now the colors are probably all gone. And now we've got a hurricane coming out of Florida up here. So that's kind of interesting. I'm watching it blow like crazy out there. At least this is all insulated. It's kind of funny, and this is nothing particular. I thought it was going to be cold in here or outside last night, so I turned on the heat, and then I came in here this morning, and it was too hot. And now I've got the air running. So that's our resin cast part. So we now have cast our hybrid piece. We're going to put it in the pressure pot, pressurize it up to 70 pounds, and leave it in the pressure pot overnight. So, hey, Brian Schwab finally made it. Projects got in the way. Yeah, I know how that goes. You can catch the replay, Brian. It's on YouTube there where you're at, so that's cool. I'm going to put this, it's in the pot. Going to put the lid on it, pressurize it up to 70 pounds, leave it sit in there overnight. A lot of times, and even with the urethanes, with the fast sets, people turn it right away, but really, give it 48, 72 hours to cure. The longer you let it cure, the better it's going to turn. So, unless you really are in a hurry, and this comes from, like I said, Spiracraft, they said, it keeps on curing for quite a while. So unless you need to, and I experienced this, I used to, cast it at the shows and then turn it the next day, and sometimes it would be a little soft. But this will have cured for a week before I turn it next week, so it should be really nice and all good to go. Brian, we ended up with a kind of a very light, translucent leaf green with 3 shades of gold, 2 shades of gold in it, and some copper, and some holographic glitter, silver holographic, and some chartreuse glitter in the last batch. I will do, Mike. I will do. Take care. Have a great week, rest of the week and weekend, and we'll see you next week. So yeah, this will cure for the week. I'll pop it out tomorrow or the next day and post it in the Spiracraft resin and wood turning community page. I'll show you what the rough blank looks like, and then we'll just let her sit for a week until next Thursday at 1 o'clock. And we will get on the lathe and we will make a big old mess in here, turning this thing. And again, don't have the design particularly in mind. It's going to be a form that rolls. I know that. I want to, unless it dictates otherwise, I want to show the Burl that's in the top as much as I can. So we'll see what happens, and looking forward to it. And I appreciate everybody coming today. It looks like it's about 2:30, so we've been here about an hour and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and cue the intro and exit out of here and put the cap on this thing, pressurize it up, and we'll call it good. If you have any questions, you can always pop them into the group, the private group, the wood and resin turning community group about this. Always happy to answer there. You can message me on Facebook, Spiracraft or Bradley, or Studios Bradley RM, however you want to get a hold of me. You can email info@Spiracraft, contact Spiracraft, Bradley@Spiracraft.com. Any of those will work and get a hold of me. So good fun today. Thank you everybody for coming along and hanging out, and we'll be at it next week. Let's see. Hello, do you find that the heavier glitter settles to the bottom? It can. This glitter doesn't tend to settle too much. Its specific gravity isn't that high. It will stay suspended pretty well. Sometimes if you really overdose it, you might end up with some on the bottom. The hardest thing I found to deal with is white pigment. It tends to end up on the bottom if you're not careful. But the glitter, for the most part, will tend to, unless you really hammer it in there. And if there's ever a question, put it in later in the mix as it starts to exotherm, and then it will stay suspended. That's part of the key. But I think in this one, I think it will probably be okay. We'll find out. We'll know when it comes out of the mold. Notice I didn't call it a bucket this time. If it's down on the bottom or if it stayed suspended. I know it's hanging on the burl itself, so that's cool. All right. Okay, I'm going to hit the intro/exit, and I will see you all next week. Thank you again. Take care. And have fun out there. And then I'm on the wrong overlay. Let's see. Go down there and do that. That was there. There we go. I get it figured out.